with the power of the Most High. I live in the light, and I'm chilling on the front line. The winds my fight, forward am I grooving. I'm dancing in His revelation. Jah is by my right hand side. That is why I will not die. Where do you run to? Where do you come from?
Welcome to another episode of the Black Couch Show, where we delve into the lives of interesting Africans, both continentally as well as globally. And I tell you, today I'm very, very excited. We have on set a wonderful lady from Ghana. She's a media practitioner as well as a journalist by profession. Let's welcome on set the lovely Selma Ramatu AL-Hassan. Can you have a seat?
Thank you.
So you're very welcome, Madam Ramatu AL-Hassan.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on the Black House Show.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful background, and you're holding some very beautiful pieces of art.
Art, yes.
You're not only a writer, you're an artist.
Well,
And I say so because it takes a certain flair to create. And so in that respect, you are an artist. So very welcome on our show today.
thank you. Thank you.
So how long have you been writing for? Because you have a media background and journalism.
Yeah. Actually, I've always loved writing. And I started when I was... my first published work was actually when I was about 14 years old.
Wow.
Yes, and I wrote a short story. I was in Achimuta School, and I belonged to the Creative Writers Club.
Okay.
And I wrote a short story, submitted it, and it was called Tanufia. And somehow it ended up in a collection of short stories
Wow.
called The Cowrie Girl and Other Stories.
I see.
And many years later, it was published again in a volume called Women Writers Africa, published by the Feminist Press of New York.
Wow.
And my little story was among them.
At the age of 14.
I wrote that when I was 14,
Wow.
yeah. But you know, it was a children's story, and what those who liked it and promoted it, what they didn't know was that I was a child when I wrote it, but they thought I did so well because they thought it was an adult who was able to put herself in the mind of a child.
Wow.
You know? But I was actually only 14 when I wrote it. After that, I went into many things. So even though I've always loved writing, I didn't publish anything again until many, many years later. You
Wow.
know, well, I did work as a print journalist.
Okay.
I went to the Ghana Institute of Journalism, and you know, one of my first jobs was with the Ghanaian Times and Weekly Spectator.
I see.
Yeah, I worked there for a few years until I went back to school to NAFTI, and there I majored. I was in the second group of students. It was a new institution, yeah, and after I graduated from NAFTI, I majored in TV production, and I worked with Film Africa at that time. When, you know...
That was at TV3, where
Yeah.
TV3 is now.
No, it wasn't at TV3. It was in Adabraka,
Okay.
Farah Avenue.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't TV Africa. It was Film Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Kwanzaa was producing. He had produced Love Brewed in the African Pot, and he was working on Heritage
Okay.
Ghana when I joined him.
I see.
Yeah, so I worked there for a few years, and then I went to GBC. Yeah, and at GBC, yes, since I'd had a news background because I'd gone to the School of Journalism before I went to NAFTI.
Okay.
So somehow, even though I went to GBC on the, you know, in the production side, I ended up with the news. And I did a bit of production, but for many years I was on the news, and I was known mostly as a news person, you know, but I had both backgrounds. So after that, I lost my mom in 1997. And after that, I went to the US and where unfortunately I lost my only child also in the US. Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah, but I was there for a while, and then when I came back to Ghana in 2013, I started writing again, and I came out with these 3 books for children in 2018.
Okay.
So the book is called Something is Wrong with My Affairs. It's a short story about the unconditional love of a 10-year-old girl and her father. Her father is a single dad, and she loved him so much. She thought the world of him, and he was such a kind, wonderful father to her. Sometimes he would go away, and she wouldn't see him for a while. And anytime he came back, he would bring gifts, and she was always so excited. But she always felt there was something wrong with her life because she couldn't tell anyone when her father traveled or where he was going to. And at the end of the story, the 10-year-old finds out that her father had been arrested for armed robbery.
Wow.
In fact, her father was an armed robber. So when she saw her father's picture at the police station, she saw a poster of her father, and the poster said wanted. And she didn't understand what it meant, so she was excited. That was a picture of her father, and at the end, but I'm just trying to tell the story that no matter how terrible a man is, to his daughter, he's the most wonderful person on earth, and love is totally
blind,
to things like that. She was very heartbroken and disappointed in the end, but it didn't change at all the love she had of her father. And even the most wicked armed robber has
somebody who loves him.
Somebody who loves, and somebody he loves.
Right.
And somebody he loves very much.
Wow.
And so that's this,
I see.
it's
That's
just a short story.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then I have this, it's called The People of Idni. That's a narrative poem. And it's just about, it's, I'll just read the introduction. It says, Idni is a mythical town located somewhere near the Volta River in Western Africa, whose people overcome a serious health crisis by applying simple, evidence-based knowledge to their problem. The story is written in a rhyming, narrative-style poem, and it emphasizes a well-known but little observed antidote to a common problem in sub-Saharan Africa. The problem is malaria and mosquitoes. So these people were having problems. They were dying. They were getting fever. And they had charlatans, medicine men, who would come and say things like, oh, I can rid your town of this ailment. Pay me this money. And you know how it is. People tend to the spiritual and pray and things instead of going to
practical.
Seek the science, And eventually they had somebody who came to advise them that all they had to do was get rid of the standing water and take care of their sanitation. So it's just a simple story of how to keep our houses clean and prevent disease. Yeah, it's called The People of Idni.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very important.
Then I have this book. It's called Glory is with God. That's also about a little girl who was born with congenital heart disease.
Okay.
She was born with what they call a hole in the heart, which is something we hear about from time to time, and leaky heart valves. Anyway, hole in the heart is cured, is treated by surgery.
Yeah.
Doctors these days easily, do the operation and close it up. But in this girl's case, her father belonged to a spiritual church, more or less a cult. And he says, no surgery. She's been afflicted by the demon of the heart. So it should be exorcism and prayers. So there was this conflict between her mother, who wanted her to have the operation, and her father, who wanted to rely on the prayers. In the end, the girl dies, and the problem is not solved because the girl dies, but the mother fought a very hard battle to get the father to agree. And in the end, she actually signs the surgical consent form. In spite of her husband's objections, she signed the form for the surgery to take place, but it was too late because the girl died, hours later before they could prepare her for the surgery. So it ends up by the woman mourning her child, and then consoling herself by remembering that everybody dies one day, and also we always say that it's not natural for a parent to bury a child. We always say that. But and I wrote this when I lost my only child. We say it's not natural, but it is actually natural. It's not common, but we can't say it's not natural.
Okay.
If you believe in the Bible, you can see that in the creation, and according to the Bible and the Quran and many other books, God created man, woman, Adam and Eve, and they had children. The first person who died was a child and not a parent. In other words, Cain killed Abel. Therefore, the first woman in creation, Eve, buried her child. And if you believe in, still with the Christianity, Jesus' mother buried him. I'm just trying to say that it may not be common.
But it does happen.
It does happen, and it even happens the very, if you believe in creation, the very first human story. So that is how my heroine here consoles herself. Even Methuselah, he lived for 990 something years, and then he died. Everybody's going to die one day,
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The concepts are very, very deep and very real. How do you come up with these storylines? Because in the first one, where the girl's father's an armed robber, I know you probably don't know any armed robbers really in your life.
No.
But how did you come up with this concept about?
There was a famous armed robber in Ghana, Akai or something.
That's right.
He was arrested. He was eventually arrested. And the newspaper story said he was arrested in a hideout and he was with his girlfriend and a daughter. So it just struck me that girlfriend and that daughter loved him.
Right.
They must have loved him and he must have loved them. You
Right.
know. Yeah. I don't know. It just, something that just crossed my mind. With this one, as I said, I lost my only child. I was really grieving myself at that time. But one thing that I talk about a lot, which I see a lot of people believe in other means of treating disease.
Okay.
They believe in prayer. And I'm not saying that prayer shouldn't be, doesn't work.
Right.
But they go for prayer instead of seeking medical treatment. I know of somebody who told me once that his daughter, his 17-year-old daughter, was complaining of headaches.
Okay.
So he had taken her to a pastor.
And
the pastor had admitted her. That's what are you talking about? Admitted her where?
In his house.
In his house for prayers.
Wow.
You see. Now that girl may have had something simple. I don't know what caused her headaches, but for a 17-year-old girl to have headaches is not uncommon at all, because you're going through adolescence and all kinds of changes are happening in your body.
Right.
It might have been something simple like that, and then the pastor admits her. And why wouldn't you take her to a doctor? And I see that a lot around me. People. Somebody told me that his child had a seizure. He said, my child has been getting seizures, so I don't know what to do. We've slaughtered so many chickens and goats, and she's still having the seizures. Why would you do that? Why haven't you taken her to a doctor? I know somebody who said to me, I can't walk. I woke up in the morning and I couldn't walk. I'm paralyzed. So I said, what happened? Did you have a stroke? Did you have an accident? He said, no, it's my aunt. No, it's my aunt who's doing it. So, I don't know, that thing, it bothers me.
Right.
It bothers me that people always blame illness on malevolent. Yes. Yeah. And our bodies are subject to illness, to disease, and we should, if we look more into the scientific and, things like that, I think would go a long way in healing ourselves, and not dying unnecessarily. There's so many people who have a stroke, and instead of rushing to the hospital, they rush to the pastor.
It's a conditioning of the mind. And
yeah.
it's also
yeah.
reflective of the society in which we live. People are desperate for quick fixes.
Quick fixes, and I don't know whether they feel let down at the hospitals, but people tend to do this a lot. Yeah.
Let's go for a commercial break. Welcome back. Okay, so those are the storybooks. I see we have 3 storybooks, and then we have 2, what looks like 2 textbooks. Tell me more about these. These are real bigger and thicker.
I have these 2 books, which I worked on in the year 2019. The whole year, I was like working every day, and I just loved it. But the first one is called Speaking of Ghana. Did you know that? And the other one is called Speaking of Africa. Did you know that? And each book is just about Ghana. Something that all this information is out there on the internet and in books and everything, but I've just gathered them together. Our recent history, Ghana's recent political history, some important Ghanaians, and the book is made up of bullet points. Like, did you know that? I would just ask a question. For each chapter, there's a summary. And I start with ancient Ghana anyway. But for each chapter, there's a summary. And chapter 2, for example, I talk about Gold Coast and New Ghana, our independence. And I just give a short summary of it. And then I go on to the bullet points. And then the first bullet point in that is that, did you know that if you left Ghana and traveled to any of the neighboring countries, you would have to read all the street signs and conduct all official business in French? Because to be able to get another English-speaking country, you have to go
all the way to Liberia.
On the west, you have to cross one country to you have to cross Ivory Coast into Liberia. On the east, you have to cross 2 countries to get to Nigeria. But in the north, you have to actually leave Africa and get to Europe before you get to another English-speaking country. You have to go to Burkina, Mali, Algeria, and then you have to cross the Mediterranean before. So that's just the and then I ask a question. Ghana has 4 distinct borders. On each of these borders lies a different part of West Africa. Which of these entities does not share a border with Ghana? And I have the Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, the Atlantic Ocean, Togo, and Benin. And you have to pick Benin, of course. Benin, So it's full of bullet points and questions. And of course, I supply the answers at the end of every chapter. And
it's a multiple choice. I see the answers.
Yes, it's multiple choice.
We used to love multiple choice. At least the answer is there. You just have to try and be smart to pick it.
So I talk about some of the geography, and I talk about some of the history also. For example, a lot of kids don't know who Kong Kenson Aka is. J.W.S. de Graaf Johnson. I mentioned all of them. I mentioned the military regimes that we had. I don't give my opinion. I just write the facts. I wrote about the coup, the abortive coup that happened in 1967. After the 66 coup, there was a coup, an attempted coup, which failed, and Lieutenant Arthur and Lieutenant Yeboah were executed by firing squad. I wrote about it. Didn't give my opinion. I just wrote about it. I wrote about um, 1979,
Okay.
the handing over to Liman, the coming back of Rawlings in 1981,
Okay.
the PNDC years. I wrote about Achampong,
Okay.
Akufu, and all that. And then I write about, people in the different regions, the different regions. For example, there's a mud cathedral built in Navrongo
That's right.
in 1905 or
Yeah.
something. It's still standing, built by mud.
Yeah.
And it's a complete
Yeah, building.
it's a complete cathedral. I write about the fact that Elmina Castle is the first European building
Yeah.
in sub-Saharan Africa,
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah. And I think it's the oldest outside of Europe, I think.
Yeah,
But,
something like that. And I write about the different regions, and I write about the north, a lot about the north of
Okay.
Ghana, where we have now, how many regions do we have? We have 5 regions now. Yeah,
The north.
there are 5 different regions. So only one of these 5 regions is the northern region.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people in Ghana, for example, don't know the difference between John Dramani Mahama and let's say Liman.
Right.
Oh, we've had 2 Northerners as president.
Yeah.
No, well, you've had 2 people from the northern part of Ghana, but the distance from their hometowns is 3 times the
Yeah.
distance from Accra to Kumasi.
Exactly.
It's from
Quite significant.
So these 2 books have actually been endorsed by the Ministry of Education
Oh, okay.
as supplementary reading.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, I want to talk about one thing
Sure.
which I wrote about. I started out by writing about ancient Ghana.
Okay.
I thought it was important to introduce the children. Well, some of them know it, but a lot of them don't. The kingdom that Ghana was named after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm.
And it was supposedly in the 12th, 13th century.
That's right.
Yes. And the people were so advanced at that time, the tax system and the buildings
Yeah.
and, things like that.
Mathematics.
And, yes. And I also brought up this point that we call the British, we refer to the British as our colonial masters, and it's a term that I personally find very, quite offensive, because why are we still calling them
Our colonial masters. Exactly.
I mean, the British colonized America.
Mm.
Do you think Americans refer to them as our colonial masters?
No. They're quite.
Or even Jamaica and
Yeah.
places like, I don't know why in Ghana
Yeah.
we still refer to them as our colonial masters.
It's very interesting. It's a reflection of how deep the colonial mentality was ingrained in us.
Yeah.
That
so
they're
are we,
no
are
longer
we colonial
around.
servants then? I mean, what are we?
A lot of us still are.
Yeah.
A lot of
okay,
us are still in that mind frame where
Yeah.
we haven't liberated ourselves. We're not confident of ourselves. We're not confident of our ideas.
Yeah.
We shun our food. We shun our clothing, our traditional names. So that deconstruction is still very much alive. I think that's why
Why, yeah.
a lot of people don't.
Yeah, but I would like to introduce the kids to a new era
Very
where
important.
they see themselves, they see the British as the British. Call
Very
them the
important,
British.
Yeah. After all, we are more advanced than the British.
And if you're-
We introduce science and mathematics
Yes, yeah.
to them and
okay.
architecture.
Okay.
Somebody said that we taught them how to heal wounds
Yes,
and how to
yes.
make sewage move.
How to make sewage
So
move.
why
okay.
shouldn't young African children
And
know
yes,
these facts?
I happen to know the story about vaccination,
Right.
which I was told this by my grandmother, where she said the Fulani herdsmen, when the cow got boils and things,
Right.
they would smear some of the pus into them. It was a form of vaccination.
Yes, yes.
They would get a mild fever and they would not
Yeah.
get that disease, which
Right.
I don't know if it's smallpox or cowpox
Mm.
or something. And if you see the way, even the traditional way of, when a child gets ill and you see a child with a mark on the face and they say
Right.
they put some medicine inside,
Right.
it's all a form of vaccination.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we refer to ourselves as slaves.
Mhm.
I myself, we all did that. But actually, yesterday I was watching something on Ghana television which said, it was talking about one of the castles at Dick's Cove
Okay.
and was showing the female slave dungeon and blah, blah, blah. Okay. The Europeans called us slaves, but we were actually just people
Right.
that they picked up. They called us slaves. So I think we shouldn't also See, and this is where the slaves were kept, and the slaves were marched from there to there, which is the people,
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
That's a way of continuing the long oratory of our history.
Yeah.
And until we write our own history, we have the Selma Al-Hassans to correct that. Otherwise, the next generation will just follow.
Yeah, okay. So that is.
And it's lovely, the way you have, like chapter 14 here, democracy is here to stay, artistic giants we are proud of. You see Professor Tuko Kai,
Yes,
Ama Taidu. These are all people that we need to, remember and cherish because they were all pioneers in their own right.
Yeah.
The great Aikwe Ama. Most Ghanaian youth do not know who Aikwe Ama is, but he's one of the most brilliant writers of our time.
Ever had, yeah.
And it's sad that we don't even have any of his books in our curriculum. We should be studying his books.
It should be a must. The way English children were made to study Shakespeare.
And Chaucer and Dickens.
So much so that we all had to study Shakespeare and Chaucer and Dickens.
Romeo and Juliet. But we should be studying his books.
We should make it a must that Aikwe Ama and some of the
2000 Seasons and all that.
Yeah, they should be in the curriculum. So a Ghanaian child can go somewhere, let's say to the US or Canada or Russia, and meet a person from that country who says, "Oh, I read
yes,
The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born."
Right.
And the Ghanaian would say,
Who's
"What's
that?
I've never." Yes.
Who's that?
Yeah.
And it's very wrong.
Yeah.
It's very wrong.
Yeah.
And that's something that goes across the board, I think, with Ghana, because Ghana has such a unique human resource.
Yeah.
We have the best across the world. If you travel around, you see that the universities across the world have a Ghanaian lecturer in the department. The best hospitals have some Ghanaian surgeon doing wonders there.
Even NASA.
The engineers.
The engineers,
So why is it that we cannot harness that human resource for our own progress? And so it's important that the young people are oriented into this thing early in life, and to be proud of their greatness. Let's go for a commercial break. Welcome back. So that's wonderful.
So I'm quite passionate about that. I was talking to Mrs. Hilary Man, is a family friend, and she came to say hello to us. So I introduced her to some children. She was taught by my mother. My mother used to be a teacher.
Oh wow.
She was the headmistress of Bolga Girls' School before she came into Parliament.
Okay.
And after Mrs. Liman went, I asked the kids, who are JSS, do you know Dr. Hilary Liman? No, they didn't know who he was.
Right.
Never heard of him. They said no.
Look at
And
that.
so I started asking them some other questions, and I realized that,
I had no clue.
Yeah. So, I started thinking, about what I could do, So this book is just a short history about Ghana. It's just like the highlights,
Okay.
If you read about the Achampong regime, for example, I just read he made a coup. He was head of state for so many years. But then the important thing that happened during his tenure was he tried to do this Operation Feed Yourself.
Remove from the right.
We moved from the right to the left. It's in the book.
Yeah.
And also metric
system.
So, yeah.
Right.
And then I talked about all the other regimes.
Okay.
In every regime from Nkrumah, from just before Nkrumah to the current regime. So it ends with, Nana Kweku Andoh as current, president.
Right.
And all that. And I list all the people who've been vice president. The first time we had a vice president in Ghana was Liman. We never had a vice president before then.
Okay.
Yeah, because Nkrumah never had one.
Mm.
And then in '69, it was a presidential,
ceremonial president,
ceremonial, yes, yeah. It was a parliamentary.
Right.
I think that's what they call parliamentary democracy.
Yeah.
So there was no vice president. So the first vice president we had was DeGraff Johnson,
Okay.
who was under Liman. So things like that, highlights about Ghana. And I thought to be made into. I explained the roots, the etymology of the word trotro, for example. People don't know where
the word trotro comes from.
We used to use a coin, threepence, that was tro, which was also simpua in Fanti and sampua in Dagbani.
Oh, I see.
Yes, and it was tro in Gang.
Okay.
And that was the cheapest means of transport. Things like that.
Yes.
Then I have this one, speaking of Africa.
Right, this is the one.
Yeah, and this one, I take all the 55 countries in Africa and tell you a little bit about them. Their currency, their president, their first president, their capital, where they are located, if they are landlocked, what language they speak, and their population, and things like that. So that when you read this book and somebody says, I'm from Eritrea, you won't ask him where
Eritrea is. Yes.
Yeah, you know where it is, Yeah, I'm saying this because I asked a child, a GSS student, where is Sierra Leone? And she said, India.
Oh.
Yes.
If you probably ask that same child about Man U or Chelsea, they'll probably have the answer.
Arsenal and those. Oh yes.
They'll probably have the answer, but
have the answer. Yeah.
And it's very sad because.
And it was heartbreaking for me. Yeah, so I wrote, speaking of Africa, did you know that? And of course, when I came to I take every country. When I came to the country of Mali, for example, I wrote about their history and their ancient history.
Yes.
Because I did read somewhere that even in astronomy, they saw some things with the naked eye, which they pointed out, which centuries later.
The Dogon people. The Sirius constellation. Yes. And that's amazing. That goes to show that Africa, we've always had that scientific insight, and it teaches us to respect the fact that not all scientific knowledge will come in the format of Western civilization. Because that's why people couldn't believe that these people were telling them there's a constellation of stars which you cannot see. And then later,
the telescope, they needed the telescope to see it. It was true.
So the Dogon are one of the most ancient tribes in Africa with steeped in knowledge, a lot of knowledge of astrology, herbal medicine, all those ancient mosques, architecture to build a dome roof. You know that most of the domes in Europe were built by the Moors, who were the black people. And without the geometry that they knew, none of the domes in Europe would be on the cathedrals and all those buildings. These are things that our children don't know.
These are things that our children should know. And I just gathered a little bit of information, to give them. For example, the campuses of the University of Timbuktu, when they were built, some of them are still standing.
Yes.
And the oldest mosque in Mali, I think it's still standing. It was built by Mansa Musa. And he paid, I think, 28 kilograms of gold or something to the architect, And I said to myself, 28 kilograms of gold, that's a lot of gold. No wonder it's still standing.
Yes, and if you look at the mosque, just like Larabanga Mosque, and a lot of the palaces in the north, Wana's palace like that, the structure and the architecture and the way they built, why does a building last that long?
Not that long.
And you see all our concrete buildings getting cracks and falling. And you go into those buildings in the middle of that heat, and they're nice and cool. And then in the Hamatan, when it's cold, they're warm inside. So we need to learn so much from our own ways, because our own ways are the best suited for where we live.
Where we live.
Exactly. So now we build buildings and we have to invest in cooling them down. So did we come or did we go? But it's very important to highlight this kind of information because otherwise a lot of people wouldn't come across it.
So I'm just hoping that children will now be inspired to learn even more than what the scope of this book can teach them. This book just tells them that this information is out there.
Right.
You see, so somebody can go and read more about the doggone people. So it's
Well-
just barely mentioned, but it's there.
With the advent of technology now,
Yeah.
with the click of your finger,
Finger.
you should be able to visit places where you'd have to have a budget and travel
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago. Now you can
Yeah.
go to Jene Mosque.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
take an aerial view of it,
Yeah.
see its surroundings,
Yeah.
travel anywhere in the world. So
Right. Yeah.
it's a good starter for them
Yeah.
to know and then go and seek further.
Yeah.
But what do you feel about the fact that technology has almost replaced the art of reading books?
It's
Flipping the pages and,
yes, yeah. I believe that it has reduced it, but I believe that the art of reading will never be lost because technology can never replace
Right,
the feeling of the book.
Getting lost
But I
in
do agree with you that it has made so many people they can get by
Right.
without reading.
Right.
They can get by without reading. But those who love to read will continue to read. This is the thing. We had to read. We had to read because we didn't have a choice. We didn't have technology.
Yeah.
There was no other way to learn but
Yeah.
to read. You had to go to a library.
Remember when
And
you went to the
borrow
library
books.
and the book was like A674, and if
Yeah.
that book was taken out, you had to wait 2 weeks
Yeah.
before the person would bring it back to the library.
Exactly, yes. And we kept on going to the library.
Yes, to check.
To check.
If that
And
book
then-
has come back.
That book has come. When we borrowed books, we had to return it or pay a fee, and
Yes.
we kept on going, yeah. So I believe that, yes, it has reduced the love of reading. A lot of people don't read anymore because they don't have to.
Right.
But I don't believe it to ever kill it,
Yeah. No,
It's
reading is
always
very
there,
important.
yeah.
You have to encourage our children to,
Yeah.
inculcate the habits.
Yeah, I can see you're a historian.
Oh,
because you
I've-
seem to know so much about it.
Well, I've been lucky to have traveled around Africa quite a bit, and my father was an avid reader. He was the kind that could read a thick book like this in a weekend.
Wow.
He would just sit in the garden,
Yeah.
drink his tea, listen to music quietly, and read a book this thick. Literally, anyone who knows him can
Yeah.
tell you that. So it was amazing when I didn't like reading books. I used to pick the books with pictures. But I guess that's where it's from. So it's good to read and rub it off on you. And so all those travels allowed me to see a lot. I do lots of accents.
Oh, okay.
I even do a Osajifo accent. I love him
Please,
so much.
I'd love to hear that.
Osajifo? Well, let's see. What can we say? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very privileged to be on the black couch talking to such a lady, the daughter of my own appointee.
Wow, that's
She was my
fantastic.
Minister of Social Welfare. And today, here I am talking to the daughter. Your mother was such a wonderful lady. Had it not been for her, the resettlement of the Akosombo Dam would not have happened how it did.
Oh, this
And
is
so,
great.
please come on the show anytime, and we shall always praise women like you who are working to make Ghana great.
This is super. This is fantastic. I thought I was listening to the old man.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. No,
that's
Osajifo
good.
is very dear to me. He towers above the rest when it comes to
Yeah.
leadership. In fact, for me, the benchmark of leadership,
Yeah,
he set that mark.
yeah,
Unfortunately, like high jump, everybody is coming underneath the bar.
yeah.
But when you think about the fact that all the huge infrastructure projects that passed through this man's hands,
Yeah,
for him to have left power without a dime in his pocket.
yeah.
We all see that his children don't have any property in Ghana. If you gave our modern politician the budget to build a port city like Tema,
Which he built from scratch.
I tell you
Yeah,
that
that-
the number of homes that that person and their family would have stashed would just be disgusting. And they built ports, they built dams, they built estates, highways. Our best road still was built.
Our best road is still the
Yes, the
highway,
Temamoto Way.
The Temamoto Way, which I'm told was discussed in textbooks in other African countries.
Because
Yeah.
when Nkrumah built the motorway, he built it before England had the M1 around London.
Wow.
So you can imagine. I mean, in the 60s, we had a team working on a nuclear reactor at Kwabenya.
Yeah.
So Ghana was among the first countries
Yeah.
that was researching nuclear technology.
Yeah.
The second generation of countries is like, Iran and Brazil and Turkey. But we were among the first generation. my generation should have been born never to know light off. So
Yeah.
Osajifo is very, very
so
dear
we're
to
like
me.
on this, we're like Malaysia
Yes,
and countries like that.
we were ahead of them.
We were ahead of
We were ahead
them.
of
And
them.
now they are way ahead of us.
Way, way, way ahead of us. They've used even the palm oil that they came to collect from here, the palm tree.
Yeah, now
You
they
see
are-
how they
they-
use it
they
to make
produce
plastics
it.
and
Yeah,
you know all kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's a huge indictment on us. And sometimes I wonder that you look at Ghana and you are endowed with a man like Osajifo, and our airport is still named after the man who brought him down.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine traveling to the US and you're landing at New York and the airport is named, John Osborne Airport, the man who shot Kennedy, or John Wilkes Booth who shot Lincoln.
Yeah.
And instead of all the Lincoln highways and all those things, they would name something like that after the man. And do you know what would happen to tourism if that airport was named Kwame Nkrumah International Airport? We don't even have to change anything about KIA. We can stay KIA, Kwame Nkrumah International Airport.
Yeah.
So he towers above everyone, and we'll have lots of shows just dedicated to him because he. But not for Nkrumah, we won't have someone like you.
Yeah.
Who's where he spread education all over the country.
He spread education all over the country. My mother was an MP from the north, but it was he who, Nkrumah said, I want representation of women. Every region should bring me a woman. I want a woman from every region in parliament.
Wow.
And the northern region was, at that time, my mother was one of the few educated women, not,
Right.
educated women. And according to her, this is a story she would tell, that everybody said, but she's my teacher. I mean, with every possible female nominee, that person would say, but Susan was my teacher, so she was like the obvious choice.
Okay.
But when she came to parliament, she just didn't become an MP and just sat there.
Right.
She proved
Took part,
herself.
yes.
She said, she told me a story of how the president called her when he was going to appoint her deputy minister of education before she became minister of social welfare. He told her that he had been watching her debate in parliament, and said she was very surprised. He said, "Sir, I didn't know that you listened to the debate of the back benches." And he said, "I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do." And he thought she was good, and he gave her the position and warned her not to fool around,
Right.
and she should work hard and not let him down. So yeah, you're right. But for him, I wouldn't be sitting here because I would have been in different circumstances, to say the least. Yeah.
No, he was great. I mean,
Yeah.
I've personally met
Yeah.
Auntie Lucy Enin,
Yeah.
who was also an MP,
MP, yeah.
and I think she was the youngest at that time.
Yeah.
And you can see how much he inspired her.
Yeah.
And I always say that outside Ghana
Yeah.
is where Nkrumah is known.
He's known, yeah.
If you travel everywhere, people don't joke with Nkrumah. It's only in Ghana that there's a debate
Yeah.
about his relevance. But
it shouldn't be a debate.
yeah, but
But
he
historically, those are the facts.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
there is
we,
a
we,
debate.
we live to see the day when
Yeah.
his vision
Yeah.
will be back on track, because
Yeah.
it was a vision that was important to the whole black diaspora.
Yeah.
And that's why in his time, everybody who was of any significance in the diaspora was coming here, from Malcolm X to Muhammad Ali,
Yeah.
Louis Armstrong.
So many great people even lived here. They made their homes here. Maya Angelou lived here for many
Yes,
years.
Nina Simone came to
Yeah.
Ghana. That's because
Yeah.
they saw in Nkrumah
Yeah.
the realization of the fact that the black man has regained his dignity.
Yeah.
He had that. When Nkrumah landed in New York in 1960, President Kennedy broke protocol and went to the plane. Actually, most times an African president will visit the US, you'll be met at the airport by some undersecretary of state, never the president.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of gravitas that he had. So long live Osajifo for
And
Dr. Kwame
he was
Nkrumah.
on Time magazine.
Yes.
He made Time magazine.
Yeah, he was the
in the 60s.
personality of the millennium,
Yeah.
according to the BBC.
Yeah.
So he was great. He was great.
He was great, yeah. And I'm mentioning Time magazine. It shouldn't really matter,
Right.
But it is a
Yes.
standard for
Yes.
what the world sees as.
And they chose to
yeah.
have him on the cover.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming. It's been lovely talking to you.
Lovely, yeah, it's been wonderful.
And I wish you the very best with these books. This is a wonderful project, and I'm sure there are lots of parents watching this show. And I want you to go out and look for these books. These are wonderful books, creations of Madame Selma Ramatu AL-Hassan. And so I'll encourage all the parents that are watching this show to invest in some of these lovely books. They will enrich the minds of your children and add value to their lives. And so on that note, we come to the end of another episode of the Blackout Show. This was brought to you by Ahara Studios. Catch us on the next episode. Thank you very much for watching.
Best believe there is no escape. Things are so hard for Babylon. They've been stubborn all along. Things are so hard for Babylon. They've been stubborn all along. That's why we have to reject it. That's why we cannot be spectators. That's why we have to reject it. That's why we cannot be